Hey there! Welcome back to another video. This time it is a mini rant. Haven't done one of these in a while. And before I get started, just want to give a quick explanation for all of this going on here. I'm taking some antibiotics for some surgery I had on my toe, so it's causing some dry skin and issues and whatever. But hey, it kind of works because when I decide to record a rant, I'm a little bit hot and bothered, so might as well look like my face is about to explode because it's so red. But anyway, this is a topic I've been thinking about doing a video about for a while. I did one in the past that was more about comparing digital streaming to physical media and talking about how physical media is still rather valuable and in a lot of ways actually better than streaming media. The only thing that physical media doesn't really have over streaming media is convenience and space, because you have to have more space to to hold more physical media. But that's not what this video is about. This mini rant's about the myth of physical media dying. There is this whole thing that's going around, that's been going around for the past few years, that physical media is dead or it's dying, and streaming is taken over completely. And I wanted to dispel that myth because it's something that I think is bandied about way too much, willy nilly, ad nauseum, and it's a statement that's lacking a lot of context. And I wanted to give some of that context in this video. Um, but before I really get down into the nitty gritty and into the meat of my argument, I want to talk about the fact that dispel some of the arguments that some people have made that the only companies that are making Blu-rays and DVDs and selling them are companies like Shell Factory, uh, uh, like they did with RoboCop 2, for instance, as collector's edition, or Arrow Video. I've seen people say that, oh well, they're boutique companies and they sell to a niche audience, and that's the only reason why they're selling. Physical media is still dying. Well, no, and then they argue that no mainstream studio is bothering to do anything with their catalogs on physical media. And I want to bring this. I want to show this. This is from 2018. This came out this year. This is from a major company. This is from Sony of all companies, and this is an anniversary edition. This is new remastered picture and sound. Has a booklet that's inside, uh, some special features and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's not like major studios aren't doing things with their catalog either on home video. They still are. This is a prime example of it. The collector's edition, the anniversary edition of the Dark Crystal, which was a wide release, and you could buy it in Walmart and a bunch of other stores at the time. So it's one of those arguments that I don't quite understand because I think it's, quite frankly, I think it's bullshit because uh, Screen Factory, Arrow, Synapse are not the only companies that are releasing collector's editions or new editions of films on Blu-ray. Other major studios are doing it as well. Now, what I usually hear about when it comes to the fact that physical media, especially DVD and Blu-rays, uh, when it comes to people saying that they are dying out, is sales. Is that, oh, sales are low. There aren't as many Blu-rays and DVDs at Best Buy anymore. The Hollywood Video and Blockbuster, they went under. There really isn't a lot of mainstream audiences who are going out and buying DVDs and Blu-rays. And they mention the sales, which have been lower than in years past, and they also mention things like You rarely ever find DVDs and Blu-rays in stores nowadays. Some people say that they don't even have stores that sell them, and so on and so forth. Or if they are at Walmart or at some other stores, the selection is so limited. And I get it. If you look at those things at first glance, it would look like, oh man, things are dying out. So, physical media is becoming a thing of the past. But if you dig deeper, you realize that it's not physical media itself that's dying out. It's the business model that was used to sell physical media that is dying out. That is what is dying, or is going to be dead, is the business model, is the way that physical media was sold to the consumer. And this is quite evident with Toys R Us. That's a prime example. Toys R Us went bankrupt in the US for a majority of different reasons. A big one was the fact that there was these three investors who bought the company with debt, and that did the company no favors. And then the company was dealing with competition from Amazon, Walmart, and Target, and various other things. And Toys R Us definitely was suffering from the fallout of the rise of the internet market. And the internet market, as you all know, is a site like Amazon or places like eBay or things like that. And Amazon especially took a huge chunk out of their sales. And also you had competitors like Walmart who would have the same toys or similar toys for cheaper prices, and so on and so forth. Now, Toys R Us, though, was not having a problem selling toys. They still sold toys. They sold billions of dollars of merchandise. The problem was their debt was so high and so bad that they ended up not making that much of a profit, because a lot of their profit was used to try to pay off the debt, and they were constantly trying to push a boulder uphill, and eventually the boulder rolled back and completely crushed them, and then kept rolling down the hill. But it was not the toys themselves that were not selling. Yes, there are instances where there are toy sales that have dipped, and there are more kids that are more into things like playing with their apps on their phones and playing video games and so on and so forth. But sales have shown that toys still sell. The thing is, nowadays, a lot of the sales are coming from the online market. And the physical media sales are not any different. The majority of sales for physical media usually come from Amazon pre-orders, or directly from the distributors themselves, like Arrow Video's website, Synapse website, Vinegar Syndrome's website, so on and so forth. The Shout Factory, a lot of them come directly from the source. And there are other independent labels that people buy things from, like Diabolique DVD and a few others, and so on and so forth. But what is happening is the business model is evolving, it's changing. And because of that, the sellers, the people who also create physical media, understand that. And they realize that in order to survive, they have now begun to cater to the audience that was the most invested and interested in the products to begin with. And that is not the average consumer. And I think that's something that's lost on a lot of people. They think, oh, well, the average Joe or Jill is not buying DVDs and Blu-rays anymore. They're just using Netflix, and they're using streaming, or they're pirating, or they're doing whatever. Yeah, these companies and the studios, they know that. So they are trying their hardest to move away from that and to appeal to the more hardcore collectors and the people who really do want to buy physical media. The thing is, as long as there is people who are willing to pay their money to buy physical copies of films or TV shows, there will always be physical copies available. It's not like if making these physical copies costs so much for the company to make that they are going to just stop making them because the average consumer isn't really as into it anymore. A prime example of this is the audio form of physical media. Physical media and audio is not selling that well. CDs, so on and so forth. But vinyls have made a comeback. And the reason why vinyls have made a comeback is because there are people, there's the audience. There's an audience that wants to buy a new album on vinyl and will pay the money to buy a new album on vinyl. So as long as the audience, as long as a group of people are there who are willing to pay for something, there's going to be market for it. And I can totally understand why people can look at the dip in sales and seeing the fact that their friends don't have any physical copies of stuff, or their parents or they themselves got rid of all their physical copies and are going digital. I get it. I understand why they would feel that that is what is going on right now, is that physical media is phasing out and dying out, and streaming and so on and so forth is taking over. But that's not a mainstream, widespread occurrence. It has not happened and to the extent that a lot of people make it out to be. And I also want to make it clear that almost from the beginning, physical media, especially in the form of film, of home video, was never really catered towards the average consumer, the everyday Joe to begin with. It wasn't. It was never intended for the average Joe. Don't believe me? Look at the prices for individual films on VHS when VHS first came out and it was available to the consumer. The prices were insane. They were $79.95, $89.95, just absolutely ridiculous prices that only people who were rich could really afford. Even VCRs were insanely expensive. There's a reason why mom and pop rental stores started renting VCRs, because a lot of people, the average consumer, couldn't afford it. And that is why you had the rise and the boom of the home rental market, with Blockbuster and Hollywood Video and all these other offshoots and so on and so forth, because of the fact that movies were so expensive. They were not catered towards the average Joe. The studios were not having these films available to the average consumer. The fact that films have been available to the average consumer for cheap prices is something completely new for the most part. And that's something that's happened for the past couple decades. This is not something that's been going on since the 80s or the 90s. Yes, there were some clearance sales, and there was a few things here and there where you could pay $20 for a VHS tape, or you had the Columbia Record House thing. But for the most part, when it comes to when you had any kind of home video in retail, it was not necessarily marketed towards the average Joe to begin with. So they weren't really relying upon the average consumer. And it's even more so nowadays. And it's been that way for years. The fact that these companies are not relying upon the average consumer. So it's not like they're losing any sales. They knew they were not going to get those sales to begin with. They've known this for years. So they catered and evolved their mindset, and in a way went back to the past. They looked at, oh, in the past we were making these available and offering them to a select clientele of people who were interested in them, and they've done people a favor by not jacking up the prices to ridiculous amounts like they did in the past and making it so only people who are rich can afford them. They've made it so they're still affordable, but these are still available options for the people who want to own their favorite films or films that they enjoyed on physical media, to have a physical copy of it. They know what's going on. They don't need the other publications or other papers or other bloggers or other people to try to say physical media is dying or the sales are low or what, so on and so forth. They know what's going on. For them, the sales are exactly where they want them to be because they're not catering or trying to get the average Joe to buy DVDs and Blu-rays anymore. And if they do, it's sold at extreme markup prices. They're not expecting them to be there on opening day. They're not expecting them to be there when the film comes out right then and there, first day. They're not expecting them to pre-order the copies. They're not expecting that. They've given up on trying to get those consumers to consume the product. And that's a smart thing to do. So if you look at things on the surface, it looks like things are really going bad and things aren't what they should be, or it looks like things are going to be sinking, or physical media sales are so bad that they're going to be erased in the next couple years and nobody will be able to buy anything and everything's going to be streaming. But if you look deeper, you dig deeper, you see what is going on. You see that things aren't really as bad as it might seem. And you realize that this is nothing new and something that has been going on for a long time when it comes to selling and dealing with physical media. I guarantee a lot of the sales for a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays that have happened over the years that have also contributed to lower sales numbers is the fact that people are buying them secondhand. They're buying them used off eBay or Amazon, or they're buying them used at the very few video stores or resale stores that exist. And those sales don't get tracked and they don't get added to the numbers that you see in the news or you see in the media or you see online. So it's one of those things where, yeah, there's some lost sales, but people are still buying physical media. It just might be one of those things where you can't really track a lot of those sales that come from used secondhand sellers. Unless there's a way to do that. I don't know if there is or not, but for what I know, there isn't. And they definitely don't tally those numbers into the sales numbers. So I just feel that there's just a lot of misinformation going on when it comes to when people talk about physical media and that it's dying or it's dead or so on and so forth. And I just wanted to make a video just clarifying a few things. And if you feel streaming or digital is the future and it's the way to go, that's fine. I have no issue with that. But for me, there's something to be said about actually holding a physical copy of the film in your hands. There's something about the presentation of it. There's something about feeling the weight of it in your arm. You know, you're just feeling it in your hands and feeling its weight. And also, there are a lot of films that will never be on streaming. You'll never find them unless you use a Kodi or you're doing some illegal stuff. You're pirating or doing whatever. And you know, and I admit it. I can ride. I've sailed the seven seas of internet pirating before, and that only because I didn't have any other option most of the time with rare and hard to find titles that aren't available officially. But you have films like this, like Devlin. It's not the greatest film in the world, but this is not a movie that it's going to end up on have a new DVD release or a Blu-ray release from any company, or it's not going to end up on Netflix or Amazon or anywhere like that. It's a fairly obscure, lesser-known movie that's pretty much going to be lost in the nether. And honestly, I'd rather have a physical copy of the film that won't disappear if my hard drive fails, or disappear when nobody's seeding it anymore. There are a lot of films that were available, a lot of rare stuff that was available online, but it's lost now because nobody's seeding it on the torrents. Or it was deleted by YouTube years ago and nobody had any backup copies. So there are downsides to physical media, but there's also downsides to digital media. It's a lot easier to lose digital media than it is to lose physical media. Also, if I want to watch a show like this, like Monsters, I can watch it anytime I want. I don't have to rely upon it being available on Netflix or Amazon or whatever. See, or buy digital copies that I have to watch on my Blu-ray player or watch on the Windows Media Player or watch on iTunes. You know, I can watch them whenever I want in the highest quality available. I can use the VLC Media Player on my computer to watch it, or I can watch them on my Blu-ray player. So that's another thing. If you are constantly just doing everything with digital, you know, with streaming, there are going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be there, and then it's going to be gone, and who knows when it's going to come back. But then again, that's similar to what I said before. But to sum things up, physical media is not dead. It's not dying. It's beginning a new life under a new sales method. It's what's dying is the business model, and that's the old business model of relying upon sales inside a retail store has been dying for years. With the rise of the internet, with the ability for people to download movies or do all this other stuff or stream, it's been something that people are going to choose convenience over going to a store and paying money to buy a product. They're choosing that every time, at least the average consumer. But the people who are buying DVDs and Blu-rays nowadays are not the average consumer. They're the diehard fans. They want a physical copy. And just like the people who want a physical copy of an album they love, and they want it on CD or they want it on vinyl. And a lot of them are picking it up on vinyl lately. Vinyl has made a comeback. Not a gigantic, huge, enormous one to the point where you see vinyls everywhere, but it's still made a bit of a comeback. And DVDs and Blu-rays have not been completely phased out. Maybe in the future they will be, but it has not happened yet. People have said it's going to happen and have said it's happening for years now. I've seen articles that were talking about it in the mid to late 2000s, and here we are in 2018, and they're still going strong in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas. It's the business model that's dying, folks. It's not the product itself. That's books aren't dying. Did books completely get erased as soon as tablets came around and Nooks and things like that? No. I remember hearing a lot of stuff that's going to be it. You know, online books, EPUBs, man, it's the end of books as we know it. But people are still buying books. And there aren't nearly as many people that I know of who are reading an EPUB or reading a book on a Nook versus actually reading a physical book. That was supposed to be the future, and people are still buying paper books. So, yeah, it's one of those things that it's just, there isn't really a lot of bookstores around. You know, Borders didn't do that well, and there's a lot of bookstores that have closed, and other small businesses have shuttered, but that's because of other things. That's not because of the fact that that people don't want to buy books anymore, or people don't want to buy DVDs and Blu-rays. There's also location. That's another thing. Like, some places just didn't sell that much to begin with, or the consumer wasn't really that interested in those things, and the company was like, fine, the sales aren't that great, well, we're just going to get rid of the store. And why not? It was a money pit. Why would you keep a store open if nobody's coming in to buy anything? And that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody doesn't want to do physical media or doesn't want to buy books or doesn't want to buy DVDs and Blu-rays. It just means that select clientele in that location isn't nearly as interested in it. or they've moved on to just buying online. It's so much more convenient. There's wider selection, and it's just one of those things where that's where the future is going. It's an online market, and you have other places like Walmart and other things that are gonna try to get in on it too. But even they know what the future is going to be. They have their own online markets and their online sites and so on and so forth. So yeah, to end this, I would say that as long as people are willing and are still buying physical media, it's not dead. And even if something happens and the studios and so on and so forth decide to stop making it and they go all digital, it's still not going to be dead. And you know why? Because there's going to be people like myself and other people that will keep it alive. They'll keep it alive with their collections and so on and so forth. People said VHS and Laserdisc have been dead for decades. As far as I'm concerned, they're alive and well. And they may not be mass produced anymore, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're dead completely and completely buried beneath the earth, never to be seen again. There's still plenty of people who are really engaged and really love collecting and love watching VHS or Laserdisc or Beta and things like that. And that's not going to stop anytime soon. So, just like the people who love vinyl, it's another thing. It's vinyl and vintage movie formats are hand in hand. And maybe in the future, DVDs and Blu-rays or 4K Blu-rays will end up in the same boat. But until then, physical media is alive and thriving, and don't let anybody tell you any different.